Think it comes down to a lot of different things. And maybe the correct question to even ask is not what is happiness, but is happiness even worth it? Because a lot of people these days pursue happiness and forget what the whole pursuit is even about. Because in this race to be happy, you forget what even made you happy in the first place. A really good example I heard from a podcast, I forget exactly where from, is that most people will give up what is currently their ideal situation to make more money to then supposedly be more happy. Obviously, that doesn't make any sense because, well, if you're giving up what already made you happy, you might as well have just quote unquote stayed happy, right? It doesn't make sense to give it up for money and then somehow get better. Like there's something missing in that logic. So it makes way more sense to just, sit there and ask yourself, like, what truly does make you happy? And it'll most likely not be like those material things. It'll be more like the things that are just, normal, average. It's the small stuff, if you will. It's the small interactions you have with your friends. It's the little happy moments you share with your family. It's those things. But yeah, we think that, getting more money and going to a better school, like we think that this is what's going to make us happy. Now, it might, it very well could, but in reality, there's probably a very good chance that is not the case. So, that begs the question of what should we do, right? Okay, fine. We shouldn't, go after these materialistic things and whatnot. So does that mean that we live like a monk? And the answer to that would be no, of course not, because that life has its own set of issues, of course. Because why wouldn't it, right? Of course, life can't be that simple. Because if it was, we would all be good at it. And that brings me to like a secondary point, right? Which is basically where if you think that pursuing happiness is in by itself the happiness, you are probably more happy. I think working out is a pretty good example of that, where essentially it's just, oh, if I keep going to the gym and I keep putting in the work, that would, yes, give me more muscle, but that as an activity being fun is what makes it a lot better than if it was, something else. I think that that by itself is what will truly make you more happy than actually, going and trying to get the biggest possible and like competing in bodybuilding shows and whatnot, whatnot. I think the pursuit of it is better. So does that mean that, the corny stuff of like, oh, the journey is the destination, like all that stuff works? I don't think that's the case because if that was the case, then we should all, in theory, be happy. And more importantly, we wouldn't care about where we're going because according to that logic, it's fine, right? Like no matter what you do, you'll still be able to essentially be happy. But the reality is, of course, much different. It's if you don't have like a clear goal or a clear like place that you know you're going, you end up being way more unhappy than happy. So then it's like, okay, now we're stuck, right? Because I can either quote unquote be happy by chasing something, but I can't just chase it because I need to set some sort of goal, right? So I need to sort of set the destination in the navigation. I can't just fucking let it go, basically. So then it's like, okay, now I'm kind of stuck, right? Because it's hard to essentially make goals that are not super materialistic while having the pursuit of them be super fun. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? But it should be fine insofar as their goals are like norm, quote unquote normal, right? Like if you're just like, oh, I need to make like this amount of money and whatever, whatever. Honestly, sometimes those goals are fine. They do seem materialistic, but if it's like, oh, like just enough money to like, live a certain type of lifestyle, I think it's fine because it's it's still not like materialistic in the sense of um so materialistic in the sense of you just have to keep going and going and going. It's like, oh, like you have an end goal in mind, right? You're like, oh, okay, like once I get to this like level of money, I'll be fine. So in that sense, I think it's okay. But of course, that's not how life works. And you end up doing something and it ends up becoming a lot easier than what you expect. So you always just change the goalpost. That's just I don't know. That's just how humans tend to be. Probably a good example that you can relate to is like when you're in school, right? When you're in school, you're like, oh, let me just, get this grade and I'll be happy. You get the grade and you're like, oh, nope, I want higher. Or you know, you have a much more adverse reaction to when you like actually like fail, right? When you like do really, really badly. So, you know, it's basically just the idea of like you just keep changing the goalpost over and over again. So it's more about trying to find something that's a bit more abstract that you chase, right? So like that's where stuff like the pursuit of learning and all this corny stuff comes in. And as corny as they sound, sometimes that is the best way to do it, just because it's just easier, right? It's easier to set that as a goal. However, it's just not as fun. So it kind of leads me into where the point where I'm just sort of aimless, and that's kind of the whole point of this channel. A little bit of it is kind of using that aimlessness, and I think that aimlessness and that chaos is it's not necessarily a bad thing. Could be a very good thing, um, but you kind of have to know what you're doing with it, if that makes sense. And yeah, the purpose of this channel is to figure out kind of like how to navigate that chaos. Um, so like as I'm playing this, like how do I even talk? Like how do I have a conversation? I'm basically trying to like speak into the abyss. The best way I can put it, of like what I want to reflect, is basically just like inner thoughts, right? Like just thoughts you randomly have. If I can do that, I'd be pretty happy. But the idea is just that basically. So hopefully you enjoy that type of stuff. If you don't, then sorry for the rambling, I guess. Maybe you find a better channel. But I think nowadays a lot of people are just so focused on like the short term stuff that they like kind of forget that in the long term it's you're supposed to um, you know do good and all this other stuff. So like that brings in the question of like morality, right? Like where does morality kind of fit into this? And honestly, the philosophers probably have a better say on this. But I think for me, it's more of just it's okay to be selfish sometimes because in the pursuit of certain things, like you kind of have to be selfish, right? Like you can't just fucking sit there and be all on your moral high ground. It's sometimes the best thing to do is literally just, take that next step and pray, basically, that, you're not hurting people. Um, I think it's more about intent. If you're doing it for yourself with the intent of hurting others, I think that by itself is fine. But I do not really believe in this concept that competition is bad, right? A lot of people these days will say that competition is bad. Oh my God, what a lag spike. So that that's the interesting point. But competition by itself, I think is totally fine because without it, you're kind of just stuck in this like endless loop where it just nothing ever works. So yeah, there's not even a real ending to this video. It's just kind of figure out what you're gonna do, and hopefully I'll see you in another episode where we'll progress more in Minecraft and talk more about random stuff.